Okay, Educated by Tara Westover. Just wanted to quickly get my thoughts on this. I don't have a whole lot of time to review it, but this is a memoir by a lady named Tara Westover from Idaho in 2018. And I think it's like the #1 best-selling memoir of all time, extremely highly reviewed. I mean, in my experience of looking at reviews, this is like the highest rated review book in general I've seen. I mean, with the most amount of reviews too. So I was like, what is this? And of course, you've heard about it for years. I've heard about it for years. I've never read it. I'm not a big memoir reader myself anyway. But I picked it up because it's like, got to read one of the best reviewed, most interesting, most popular books since ever. So I checked it out of curiosity. And I have to say, very well written. She did a great job. The story is Tara comes from Idaho, broken background, mental illness in the family, and she's basically abused by her brothers. I mean, you name it, it happened to her. They were homeschooled. They lived in the middle of Idaho in a rural area where they worked as kind of scrap metalists with a junkyard. The mother is essential oils / midwife. Not a whole lot of money, not a whole lot of education, and there's a lot of discrepancy surrounding the book. I just have to tell you what I found out. I've watched some videos surrounding this book and her life, and there's a family lawyer that says that this is not accurate and to dismiss what she says. This is all since, when it first came out, it was widely accepted, and I think it still is to today as being accurate, But there's people that say that she's very much exaggerated actually what happened in her childhood to make for better storytelling. And that really rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. And so some of the siblings have not even come out wholeheartedly and supported her side of the story. But so you've got kind of this controversial behind the scenes. I'm not picking a side. I'm just telling you what is going on. Because I found it kind of a little bit hard to believe, not the stories themselves of abuse and the childhood and all, because of course you got Hillbilly Elegy, which is another great book just like this, From Rural to Education, and of course Tara ends up coming from Idaho. This is the part that I was like, how does that work? She says in interviews that she didn't get a GED ever. She never got a GED, yet she is admitted into BYU, and so I was like, okay, wait a minute. But then in the book, or in my research of the book, I found that she did get a GED, and so I was and I thought, well, that makes sense because you have to have a GED to get into college on an application. So, and they used the GED scores because all she did was talk about the ACT that she took and never actually got a GED. So a little bit of, I kind of was like, that's odd. How do you get into BYU without a formal education? It doesn't have to be formal education, but just a GED, a high school diploma, because you can homeschool and get that. So I was a little worried. I was like, well, does that make sense? And then she goes from BYU to Cambridge, which again, is a big leap. How does that happen? Well, her teacher, Dr. Steinberg, advocates for a Rights of Rec letter for the Gates Foundation scholarship at Cambridge, and the Melinda Gates and Bill Gates Foundation funds her study at Cambridge. She goes to Paris, she studies, she goes all over the place and gets this education, and then, of course, she writes this book. And so overall, the writing was very good. It kept my interest. She did it in a way that was more like a horror thriller novel where she doesn't unveil all the details at one time, kind of takes you along. The writing was really beautiful. That was the one thing that stuck out to me. Her ability to describe things in an illustrative way using very nice language, very nice writing language. I enjoyed that part of it. I think she did a great job, which I think is partly why it gets great reviews, as well as how she chose to kind of tell the story in sequence. So I picked a couple of my favorite parts out. I want to just show what I wrote down, just a few things. One statement I liked in here that she put: an educated person is not someone that can recite an army of facts and knows a lot of things, but rather it is someone that has the flexibility of mind, someone that's willing to explore her own prejudice and has acquired a depth of understanding that allows her to see the world through another point of view. I liked that a lot. That applies to all of us. Education is less about knowing more than someone and maybe more about knowing someone. So I thought that was a great statement. You see how she's very eloquent with her words. I also wrote down, this is an idea I had, and what resonated with me is how mental illness destroys families and destroys lives. So, I mean, that was really like an undertone in the book is how the mental illness of her dad had bipolar disorder, how that impacted the family and destroyed the family. So the root of the issue was mental illness, which I thought was interesting. So, we touched on the controversial circumstances, people speculating maybe that there's been heavily exaggeration. The family has an essential oils business now that's like employing 40 people. I mean, it's this massive business called Butterfly. You can Google it. It's kind of interesting if you Google it because people go on and give false reviews toward the business and give it like a 1 star. So when you Google it, it's called Butterfly Express. You see that the scam advisor numbers are through the roof and it's a 1 out of 5. And the mother of Tara Westover, I think it's Laura Westover. Let's see. I found this fascinating, and you will too. Laurie Westover wrote a follow-up to this book in 2020 called Educating by Laurie Westover. And it has a 1.7 out of 5 on Goodreads. But so was her rebuttal almost to this book, is telling why this is not true. And so, based on the reviews, people are siding with Tara Westover. But you do have this sort of like controversial thing going on that I don't know if you had in 2018. I think this really might have started in 2020 when the memoir from the mother came out and disputed this. So, now that we're in 2024, you kind of get that element of the review. So I think that's all I had. I like the book. I have to run, but I like the book. And she received the National Humanities Medal on March 21st of 2023 at the White House. So, I mean, if there's anything to do in the liberal, like college-educated, liberal arts, Bill Gates Foundation kind of stuff, anything to do with literature or education or big ideas festivals like the Aspen Ideas Festival, thought conferences and stuff, she is a huge part of. And so, of course, she gets the National Humanities Medal as well. So I put that on there as a note because that's very significant to get that from the White House. So just another thing to add to her, a feather in her cap. So she's done a lot. She's written a great book here. Fascinating story. Probably wouldn't read it again, but that's just because I'm not a big memoir person. Educated, a memoir by Tara Westover.